when I was a kid, you know, all I wanted to do was involve myself in music, and my mother was a big fan of real early R&B, and my father, he listened to opera constantly. So I had all this music in my house. My father worked in a freight yard, and one night he went to the freight car. It was coming in from Chicago. It was Webcor, and he grabbed something that said record on it. So he figured that was what I needed, and he put it in a bag. And the next morning, I got it. You know, he gave it to me. We opened the box. It wasn't a record player. It was a tape recorder. He had a mic, and I got into like recording things, like hanging it out the window because the elevated train went by the tenement that I lived in. And I put on headphones and listened to it. And my father, he said, "What do you listen to?" And I said, "Music." He said, "Who made the music?" I said, "I did." He said, "You like to make music, Johnny?" And I said, "Yeah, I do, Dad. I like to make music." And like 2 weeks later, somehow or another, an acoustic guitar fell off a freight car. And that's what I got. And I got an acoustic guitar. And I started playing at around 8 years old, strumming chords, then writing songs, and then recording them on my tape recorder. You know, by the time I was 14 or 15, they were pretty good. I beat the draft because I was crazy, they thought. Then I decided, after the air was cleared and I wasn't going to Vietnam, that this other guy that I knew played guitar, I said, "You and I, we should go to Liverpool because that's where everything is happening." So I convinced him. The cheapest way there was by tramp steamer. So we worked all summer in some glass factory. Got enough money to have a few extra bucks and pay for our fare to Liverpool. It took almost 30 days to get there on a tramp steamer in November, crossing the North Atlantic, the worst trip you could ever imagine. But it was exciting for us because we knew we were going to be in Liverpool, where the Beatles were, where the Mersey sound was. So we finally landed in Liverpool, and immigration came on the boat, and they said, "So, what are you two doing here?" I opened up first. I said, "We've come to work." And immigration said, "Do you have a work permit?" "No." "Do you have a return trip ticket?" "No." "Two kids." "Do you have a visa?" "No." "Well, then when this ship leaves, you're on it and you can't come into England." So that night, I escaped. I escaped from the ship. I went into Liverpool Central, left my friend there. He was afraid to leave. I told him, "Don't worry, I'll be back for you. I'll get us, somehow I'll make this work." So I went into Liverpool, and the week that we got there, the Beatles had released an album called Rubber Soul. So I went into a record store immediately, bought this album, played it in a listening booth. It was great. One speaker, mono, sounded amazing. I walked out and I said, "How do I stay here? How do I do this? I'm here, I want to stay in this country." And there was a newspaper office across the way called the Liverpool Echo. Why don't I just go in there and tell them my story? Aggression. Got to be thinking all the time. So I go in, I tell somebody, the receptionist, I said, "I'm an American musician and I'm being held captive on a ship in the harbor. But I escaped," and she said, "Just wait here." And she went and got an editor, and I told him the story. He said, I like it, it's a good story. I'll tell you what, you have to go back to the ship, and tomorrow I'll have my newspaper, who gets your exclusive story, and almost every newspaper in England, especially in the North and the Midwest, to cover this thing. Great, so we stopped. He said, "You hungry?" I said, "Yeah." We had some fish and chips, drove me back to the harbor. I went back on the ship with this record, and I told my friend the story, and we listened to the record all night. And he said, "You know, that guy just wanted to get rid of you." But the next day, sure enough, all these newspapers were there. And we were 5 days in port. So the next day, day 3, it was all over the front pages, especially in Liverpool, all the front pages. And in London, and all the young Americans refused landing and all this stuff. And they took pictures of us with our guitars on the ship. The Liverpool Echo also had a TV station, so they hired these girls to march up and down in front of the ship, and they filmed it, and with signs that said, "Free the Yanks." Day 5. The ship's leaving. Immigration comes on board, says, "We don't know how you've done this, but you have people like calling us and going crazy saying, 'What are you doing, these poor Americans? You gotta.'" So they let us go. They gave us a 60-day visa. This guy from the newspaper, he put us right in another band. So we played for a while in Liverpool. About a month into this journey, we were at a club after a gig, and a guy came up to us and he said, "Hey, aren't you the 2 Yanks, the famous Yanks?" And we said, yeah, that's us. And he says, "Well, my friend is parked around the corner and he wants an autograph. Do you mind?" It was immigration. And they handcuffed us. They threw us in a car. They went right to a train station. They shackled us to our seats. The train went from Liverpool to London, changed trains, left in chains like this, to another train. That train went to Southampton, and they threw us on the first ship going to New York. So now I go back to America, and it being a time when everything was English, and that was the hot thing. We were 2 musicians that had been there, had played there, and I'd sent press clippings back. So we immediately got like good gigs. And then finally, I get back to New York, 1969, early in the year, and I run into my friend. He said, "I'm tired of being on the road." He goes, "Let's put together a band here in New York." Anyway, he told me to mix it. And basically, I just sat there and let the engineer reproduce the rough mixes. And I thought, this is a way of getting control over things that I've never had. And I think I want to do this. I went to a studio and got a job as a janitor, just to get my foot in the door. And I worked my way up from janitor to a general worker. So I was carrying tapes into artists that were fixing up their tracks they had recorded at Woodstock. There's Jimi Hendrix offering me a joint, and I'm like, man, I'm definitely in the right place. I started cutting people's demos, 4-track, before they were going to do the real records. And then one day I see when I come in to check my schedule, wow, I'm on this John Lennon album. He was recording Imagine. And my job on this thing was to be the editor. And then about 4 days into the project, the door opens up, and there's John Lennon standing in the doorway. And he says, "Do you mind if I come in here for a while?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." I almost peed in my pants. I said, "Yeah, I'm the guy editing." And he just said, "Yeah, you're doing a great job. I'm just going to sit down here, okay, on the other side of this console." And he sat down on the couch. He put his feet up on the glass, crossed. And all I could see was cigarette smoke and his feet. And I was like, oh, is John Lennon in the room with me? Finally, I got up the courage to say, "I've been to Liverpool." Now his head pops up. And he says, "I've been to Liverpool." He goes, "Where are you from?" I said, "From New York City. I'm born and raised." He said, "Well, everybody there wants to come here. Why would you want to go there? It's a dirty city. See, even I just moved here." I said, "Well, this was back in, in 65. It's like everything that was happening there. So how did that work out for you?" I said, "Well, good and bad." I said, "The bad was I got deported." "Oh, what was the good?" I said, "The good was before I left, I made a lot of noise." And he looked at me and he said, "The Crazy Yank on all the newspapers." "Oh, was that you?" I said, "Yeah, that was me." He says, "We release a record. It should have been just us on the front page, especially in Liverpool. Who do we see but these 2 crazy Yanks?" And he said, I can't believe I'm meeting you. He gets really excited. He says, well, come down to the studio. When do you finish here? I said, I'm wrapping it up now. He goes, come down to where we're tracking. You got to meet Yoko. It's amazing. I can't believe I'm meeting you. He was so excited. Well, he and I became friends, and I started working with him. And I started working with other people, making the records, engineering. Then I started producing, and I ran into Johnny. He goes, hey, you'll be a big producer now. And I was making Yoko's records. And John would come by, and we would just have a laugh. And then after many albums and his retirement, he called me up. He said, I'm coming back. I want you to produce me. And so I ended up being his producer. But all of these things I'm telling you, that's part of my story. But part of your story is to find the passion, find a way to get into what you're doing, then move yourself forward. There are three things that are involved in making it work for you. One is you have to want to do it whether it pays or it doesn't. You have to love that you do it, so you do it. You just do it. Two, you have to get lucky. Third, you have to be aggressive about your talent. So I don't like to go with the crowd. And now that I'm signing artists, I'm always looking for something unique and original. I'd rather work with an artist that has a truth that's part of this. It's not a projection of this or that or trying to be something else, but a truth. A lot of times your truth is something else, is something someone else can identify with. I have that same heartbreak. I have that same broken toenail. Try to be original. Try to be unique. Try to say something. Something you believe. And hope that someone else hears it and likes it.